Welcome to the Art of Decluttering. My name is Amy Ravel and I am your pleasured host. Well, it's a pleasure to be your host. It's also a pleasure to record this episode. Whatever. What a start. What a start. I could restart the episode and restart the recording, but I'm not going to do that because we are family and it is okay to be a little bit tongue-tied at times. I started last week's episode by just thanking all of you who had let me know why you love listening to the podcast. Many of you just reached out to say, yes, please keep doing it weekly. We're not feeling like we need breathing space from the show, which is excellent. What I wanted to do at the start of this episode is just share a beautiful story that I got from one of our listeners in the UK. She sent me this beautiful message about like how her family loves listening to the show. She loves listening to it, and then she loves decluttering with her husband. And beautifully, her husband loves decluttering with her. And she said they'll often say to each other, that's what Amy would say, which I just think is hilarious because I don't even sometimes know what I want to say. She explained then that her 5-year-old boy has taken it upon himself to be organising his toy shelves, adding his own labels. Absolutely bless him. I love it when kids label things themselves and they've got their gorgeous handwriting. And she said that he started organising and labelling the kitchen drawers without any of her input. Like, what a little treasure. She said she's got a 1-year-old girl who is a happy, wonderful mess, which I just think is perfect. But she did say, I'm so excited to have found your podcast so I can raise her in an intentional and creative environment. Oh my goodness, like this, Sarah, you're amazing. And this was my favorite line. She says, a few weeks ago, my boy, the 5-year-old, caught the end of an episode as we got into the car. And he said, today at school, I'm going to enjoy the freedom. Oh my goodness, this little tagline at the end of every episode I've ever done. I write it in every book that I sign, enjoy the freedom. And this little 5-year-old is walking into his day saying, I'm going to enjoy the freedom at school, Mum. Just absolutely melted my heart, Sarah. Thank you so much for sending through that story. You've made my podcast heart very, very happy. So we're into week 2 of our What's Your Problem series. Last week we talked about what you do when you've got a quantity problem, when you've just got too much stuff. And we talked about how a quantity problem is solved through decluttering. And if you're unsure what your problem is, assume it's a quantity problem until proven otherwise. It's generally the outer layer of the onion that whenever you start in a space, just assume that you've got too much. Whenever you find a space that's not quite working, it's overwhelming, it's just constantly in a mess, assume quantity. And then this week we're going to talk about what's your problem? It's a systems problem. So you've dealt with the quantity, and so now you're kind of looking at the house and going, okay, but still not really working yet. And we'll sometimes find that with clients is once we've done all the decluttering, it's like, well, now what? I've still got all the stuff. What do I need to do with it? And this is when it becomes a systems problem. And the great thing about a systems problem is the solution's super fun. The solution is organising. And as a professional organizer, we also call ourselves like professional declutterers or decluttering and organising coaches or experts. The organising part is really satisfying. You get to have things that match if you want. You get to create homes for things and create solutions. So let's talk about the problem of having a system problem. It's when items don't have a home. They don't kind of belong anywhere. It's not clear where you should be putting things. It's complicated to tidy up. What you've got is like a really complicated system when it doesn't need to be complicated. It actually needs to be quite simple. So I often think about, like, if I'm thinking, okay, we've got a systems problem and the solution is organising, what we're wanting to translate or transfer is someone from complicated to simple. So you might have, everything has a home, but you've got to open this drawer and a third back there and it's alphabetized. You've got a complex system problem. But actually what we want is simple organising solutions. We want to make things simple and easy for everyone in the household to follow, easy for you to follow when you've got a health thing and you're unwell or you're busy or you're tired or you're overwhelmed. We don't want to create such complicated systems that you need a PhD to follow them. And then the other solution is a systems solution is you can create the perfect solution, but it's too hard to maintain because it's got to be perfect. And this can lead to a lot of discouragement, and you can go back again. You'll be able to see the links in the show notes about episodes around perfection and what to do when you're kind of stuck with, I want this system to be perfect. I don't want anyone to get it wrong. You set the bar too high, and so nobody else can do it like you can. And so the system problem becomes you've got a bottleneck, and you are the bottleneck. And for some of you, you are the bottleneck. It's not just a generic you, it's a specific, you're the bottleneck because you're creating this ideal in your mind, perfect solution to the system or perfect system, and it's actually not working for you. You've created something that needs to be perfect, but actually what you need is functional. And so an organizing solution that is simple and functional will always solve a system problem that is complicated and perfect. So it might look like, so let's say you've got this system problem, like how can you diagnose a systems problem? It might look like you're struggling to find things. So you're trying to walk out the house. It's not like you've got 10 sets of keys. It's not like you've got a quantity key problem. You've got a system problem because you can't find where the keys are. Or maybe you're unsure where to put things away. And so things are just laid about on flat surfaces and they pile up, and flat surfaces attract clutter. They're like magnets. And so you've got like all these clutter piles. You know that the things in those piles are needed and you're going to use them. It's not a quantity issue. But what you don't have is a system. Sometimes this looks like washing baskets of clothes that are all around the house. And it's not because the clothes don't fit into the wardrobe where they belong, right? So that would be a quantity issue. But it's actually that the system of getting through the washing and the system of putting the clothes away is complex or unclear or has too many steps. And so it just needs to be simplified. So when we're talking about a solution of organizing, the key question I want you to ask yourself to solve this problem is, where does it belong? Where does it belong? Because if you can answer that problem, you're simplifying your system. So I'm going to give you 3 things in just a minute that help you to create an organizational solution that is simple and functional, which means you'll be able to maintain it over time. So let's take a quick break and I'll be back with that solution in just a second. So the 3 things we're going to talk about that are important when you're creating an organizational system is like with like, setting limits, and having a home for everything. So like with like is, if you imagine walking through a supermarket, you don't have the tomato paste in one spot and then a different brand of tomato paste on the other side of the supermarket and the diced tomatoes in a completely different spot. We keep things like with like. On a bookshelf, books are all there together, like with like. A wardrobe is for your clothes, like with like. A kitchen is for your dishes and your crockery and your cutlery, like with like. And so when you organize like with like, it makes it much easier for you to find things and it makes it much easier for you to put things away. It's logical. Like for like is a really logical way of organizing your home. Often when we're working with a client and we've kind of gone through this quantity issue and we've cleared stuff up, we may have found, say, phone chargers in 8 different places in the house, or we may have found headphones in a whole lot of different spots, or there might be kids swimming things in 3 different places in the house. And so it's a complicated system because where do you actually put away the bathers? Where do you actually go to look for the kids' school uniform hat when there's not a home for it? And so like with like means that I've got to find the school uniform. Well, that's where the school uniform lives, in this one spot. The next thing is about setting limits, and that's about making sure that you don't go over what your quantity allowance is, but it's about saying, like, we actually need, how do we know what the limit is? Is the limit just your house? Because if the limit is your house, then as long as you've solved the problem of the quantity and you've decluttered, as long as the stuff's in your house, that's cool, right? Except it's not, because it doesn't solve your system's problem. So setting limits is about using smaller containers. So rather than just the container of your house or the container of your room being the kitchen, we're talking about, okay, well, pots and pans live in this drawer. That's a limit. That's a container of where the pots and pans live. And the pots and pans drawer is only as big as the pots and pans drawer is. So what I keep in terms of pots and pans needs to fit in the pots and pans drawer. And that flows into this a home for everything. because it's not about just saying where it lives, it's like what it's contained within. And so it is actually important in homes to have storage, to have containers, to have storage furniture, to have wardrobes, to have pantries, because that's how we keep this like with like and setting limits and a home for everything. It culminates when you've got an organizational system that works for you, is simple and functional. So let me give you an example of what this might look like. If your kids have a school bag each and maybe an activity bag. So like my kids, you probably know, play basketball. So they've both got a basketball bag. It lives in their bedrooms. It's got like a mouth guard, their basketball. I think one's got an ankle brace, one's got a knee brace. They've got water bottle, they've got their basketball boots. So it's kind of like there's no point having their school bag become their basketball bag and swap it over. Like sometimes it's 5 times a week the basketball bag's going out of the house. So if your kids have 2 bags each and they come home from school or from an after school activity and they dump their bags in front of the door or in the lounge room, or they just dump their bags somewhere, you don't necessarily have a quantity issue at that point because, you know, you've got for each child just 2 bags. It's not like that's not extreme. It's reasonable given the activities that they're doing. And so you don't have a quantity issue. But while there's no clear organisational solution, you have a systems issue. So of course they're ending up on the floor because you haven't created a home for it. You haven't created a limit where you say this is where it belongs. And so what if you hung a few hooks and said that's where those bags live? You're creating a system. You're creating a home for them. So the question, where does it belong? Oh, it belongs on the hooks. And all of a sudden, it's much easier to keep tidy because it's organized, right? So I'll give you another example because I think sometimes examples are super helpful. If you've got a messy kitchen bench, the problem is you've got a systems problem. It's not necessarily a quantity problem. You still need cutlery, crockery, glassware, appliances. You need those things. So you've gone through, you've got rid of the excess. You've now got a systems problem because it's not organized. So the solution is to organize it, and it could look like this. Instead of having appliances all over the bench, so you might have a soda stream maker and a kettle and a toaster and a microwave and an air fryer and a sandwich press and a coffee grinder and a ninja warrior, what are they called? Like a ninja blitzy thing, whatever those are called. So you might have all of these appliances and they're out on the bench. And because they're out on the bench, it naturally makes the space messy. And it's really easy for other clutter to come alongside it and to make it messy as well. So what if you created some homes for them? What if you set limits on what's going to stay on the bench and what actually needs to be in a drawer or a cupboard or in the pantry or somewhere else? So it might be that you have to clear out some space. You might have to reshuffle some things. This might be a spot where you go, oh, I need to deep dive into the quantity issue. Because if I would like things to be in a cupboard, maybe I don't need 5 salad bowls. I could probably get away with 2. So all of a sudden that sandwich press that was sitting on the bench all the time has a home. And so the system is when it's finished being used, you can put it away and you don't have to look at it all the time. And can you see how you've gone from at the start, you just had a whole lot of stuff, and then you've gone through the stuff I want to keep. But now we're organizing it. We're making it so that things have a home. Like, where does it belong? What's your problem? My problem is I have a systems issue. The solution is I'm going to get organized. And do you know what? There are a million places you can look for organizational solutions online. You just pick a YouTube channel, try the Minimal Mum, try Clutterbug. There are so many. Have a look what other people are doing. Have a look on Pinterest. Jump into our Facebook community, the Art of Decluttering community on Facebook. And you'll be able to see what people do in there, see some of our before and after photos. Get inspiration from other people. You do not need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to organizing and solving this systems problem. Go to IKEA, jump on the IKEA website and have a look what they've got. Wander through Kmart, not because you're just going to acquire additional stuff and put yourself back in a quantity problem, but the quantity problem is containers. But get ideas about what's going to work. And before you go and splash out money and buy these things, really think about it. Think, is this going to solve the problem that I have? Or do I still have a quantity issue that I need to deal with? What you could do, I've got lots of virtual clients from all over the world. I did one in the UK this week where clients say to me, hey, can I jump on a virtual session with you for 1 hour? And can you help us with this systems thing? What storage do we need? What's working? Can you see our home in a different way? What piece of furniture would go here? I'm like a walking IKEA catalogue. And so sometimes that's what people do. I did one recently for a lady's kitchen in Queensland. It's like, Amy, tell me how to use this space well so that it's organised. And that's a really key part to overcoming the clutter and the overwhelm in your home, is having things organised. So to recap, if you've got a quantity problem, you're going to declutter. And that's always the first step. Always, always, always. I always say never organise what you could declutter. Never organise what you could declutter. And then you might have a systems problem. You just need organisation. So you need to actually create homes for things and how are you going to store things and what's that going to look like. And then next week, we're going to talk about like what happens when it's really hard to maintain it. You've got a maintenance problem. We're going to talk about what habits look like in that scenario. So I hope that's been helpful. Make sure if you haven't listened to last week's episode, do that first before you go out and buy containers, because you want to deal with your quantity issue and then come and deal with your systems issue with confidence and know that you're actually going to be containing things that you love and you use and you need, rather than containing just all the stuff before you declutter it first. If you've got any questions, solutions, ideas, send me a DM, jump into the Facebook community and share. There's 120,000 people in there. Come and be part of it. So until next week, enjoy the freedom. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land this podcast is recorded on. I would also like to pay respects to their elders, both past and present, of the Kulin Nation, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love you to rate and review the show on your podcast app. That will help others to find the Art of Decluttering podcast as well. If you'd like any more information, you can visit theartofdecluttering.com.au, and I would love to see you in my Facebook group. Just search the Art of Decluttering community on Facebook and join today. I hope that you have an incredible rest of your day and enjoy the freedom.